Dr. Ryan Carter knew he was breaking every rule in the book. The Kethera exclusion zone had been off-limits for 300 years, ever since the war that nearly tore the galaxy apart. Nobody went there anymore. The galactic authorities had made sure of that. They'd quarantined the entire sector, sealed it off like a tomb, hoping everyone would just forget what happened there. The jungle moon of Verdura 7 had become nothing more than a ghost story, a place where ships disappeared and questions went unanswered. But Ryan wasn't the type to follow rules when they didn't make sense. His small archaeological team had picked up something strange on their deep space scanners 3 weeks ago. A metallic signature, buried under miles of thick jungle growth. The readings were old, really old, dating back to the final days of the war. Whatever was down there had been sleeping for centuries, hidden beneath a forest that had grown wild and unchecked since the battles ended. Ryan knew the Galactic Council would never give him permission to investigate. They'd spent 3 centuries trying to erase certain parts of history, particularly anything that made humans look too capable or too dangerous. The official story painted humanity as reckless newcomers who'd nearly destroyed everything with their aggressive tactics. Ryan had always suspected there was more to it than that. His shuttle shook as it pushed through the dense canopy of Verdura 7. Sitting next to him in the cockpit was Kreth, his alien pilot, a 4-armed creature from a species that valued caution above all else. Kreth's translator device crackled with nervous static as he spoke. "This is madness, Doctor. Pure madness. You know what they say about this place. Ships come here and they never leave. The jungle swallows them whole. There are stories about this moon, bad stories." Ryan kept his eyes on the scanner display, watching the signal grow stronger with each passing second. "Stories are just stories, Kreth. We're scientists. We deal in facts." "Facts like the 3 survey ships that vanished here in the last century?" Kreth shot back. "Facts like the Council's standing order that anyone entering this zone forfeits all rescue rights." Ryan didn't answer. The truth was, Kreth had every reason to be scared. This mission was dangerous, possibly suicidal. But the signature on his scanner was massive, easily the size of an old Earth dreadnought. If there really was something that big down there, hidden and forgotten, Ryan needed to know what it was and why it had been left behind. The shuttle finally broke through the lower canopy and emerged into a clearing. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. There, rising from the undergrowth like some ancient metal monument, was a ship. But this wasn't just any ship. It was enormous, dwarfing anything Ryan had ever seen outside of military museums. Thick vines covered most of its hull, and trees had grown up around its landing struts, but the basic shape was unmistakable. This was a warship, a real one, from the old Earth Defense Fleet. Ryan set the shuttle down at the edge of the clearing and grabbed his exploration pack. His hands were shaking slightly as he checked his equipment. Behind him, the rest of his small team was gathering their gear. There was Jennifer, his lead engineer, a quiet woman from the Mars colonies who could fix anything mechanical. Beside her stood Tom, a data specialist from Earth's Asian territories who'd helped Ryan decode the initial signal readings. "Stay close and stay alert," Ryan told them as they exited the shuttle. "We have no idea what condition this thing is in." The clearing was eerily quiet. Verdura 7's jungle was usually full of sound, strange calls from alien creatures and the constant buzz of insects. But here, near the ship, everything was silent. It felt wrong, like the jungle itself was holding its breath. Ryan approached the massive vessel slowly, his boots crunching on ancient debris and broken vegetation. The hull towered above them, easily 10 stories tall at its lowest point. He could see markings on the metal now, faded but still readable. The old Earth Defense Fleet insignia, a design that hadn't been used in 300 years. Below it were words in English, EDSF Prometheus. "The Prometheus," Jennifer whispered behind him. "That ship was listed as destroyed. Lost with all hands in the final battle." Ryan nodded slowly. He'd read the reports, the official histories. The Prometheus had been one of humanity's last great warships, destroyed in a battle that supposedly proved how reckless and dangerous human military thinking had become. Seeing it here, intact and whole, meant those reports were lies. He found what looked like a boarding ramp, half buried in soil and covered with glowing vines. Ryan pulled the vegetation aside carefully and stepped onto the metal surface. The moment his boot made contact with the ramp, everything changed. Lights blazed to life across the enormous hull. Ryan stumbled backward in shock as system after system activated. The sound of humming machinery filled the air, growing louder by the second. Panels that had been dark for 3 centuries suddenly glowed with power. The ship was waking up. Then came the voice. It was human, female, and crystal clear despite being generated by technology that should have been dead and corroded centuries ago. The voice echoed across the clearing from external speakers, calm and almost welcoming. Biometric scan complete. Human DNA detected. Identity confirmed as Homo sapiens, Earth origin. Welcome home, child of humanity. I have been waiting for you. Ryan stood frozen, his heart hammering in his chest. Behind him, he could hear his team members gasping in shock. Kreth had stumbled back to the shuttle, clicking frantically in his native language. The massive ship continued powering up, section after section coming online. Lights traced paths along the hull, illuminating symbols and markings that had been hidden in shadow. The boarding ramp fully extended with a mechanical groan, revealing a lit interior corridor. Ryan looked at Jennifer and Tom. Both of them stared back at him with wide eyes. This changed everything. An ancient human warship, supposedly destroyed, was not only intact but somehow still functional. And it had recognized him as human. Whatever secrets the Galactic Council had been hiding for 300 years, they were about to come to light. Ryan stood at the base of the boarding ramp, staring up at the massive ship that had just come to life after 3 centuries of silence. The name EDSF Prometheus glowed on display panels that had activated all along the hull. His mind raced through everything he knew about this ship. According to every history book, every official record, the Prometheus had been destroyed in the final battle of the Human-Kethra War. It was supposed to be nothing more than debris floating somewhere in deep space. But here it was, intact and very much operational. Jennifer stepped up beside him, her scanner held out in front of her like a shield. Ryan, this doesn't make any sense. Look at these readings. The power systems are running at nearly full capacity. That's impossible. No reactor we've ever built could stay active for 300 years without maintenance. The fuel alone should have degraded decades ago. Maybe it didn't stay active, Tom suggested from behind them. Maybe it just woke up when Ryan touched the ramp. Before anyone could respond, that voice came again from the ship's external speakers. It was calm and measured, with a slightly warm tone that made it sound almost friendly. Your engineer is correct to be confused. Standard galactic technology could not achieve what you are witnessing. However, I am not standard galactic technology. I am human engineering. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. Who are you? What are you? My designation is ARIA. Advanced Recursive Intelligence Architecture. I am the mind of this vessel, created by human scientists during the final years of the war. I have been in a hibernation state for 312 years, waiting for the return of humanity. Kreth, who had been hiding near the shuttle, called out nervously. Artificial intelligence? A thinking machine? Those are banned by council law. This is a violation of the Synthetic Minds Treaty. A treaty signed after my creation, Arya responded. A treaty designed specifically to prevent humanity from building more ships like Prometheus. The council feared what we represented. Ryan made a decision. Whatever this was, whatever secrets this ship held, he needed to know. He started walking up the ramp. Jennifer and Tom exchanged glances, then followed. Even Kreth, despite his obvious fear, couldn't resist the pull of discovery and came along behind them. The interior of the ship was stunning. Ryan had expected rust, decay, maybe emergency lighting at best. Instead, the corridors were pristine, lit with soft white light that came from panels in the ceiling. The walls were smooth metal, unmarked by time or damage. It looked like the ship had been built yesterday. How is everything so clean? Jennifer asked, running her hand along a wall. There should be dust, corrosion, something. I maintained a low-level stasis field throughout the ship, Arya explained. Her voice now came from speakers in the ceiling, following them as they walked. It slowed decay to nearly zero. Every system, every component, has been preserved exactly as it was on the day I entered hibernation mode. The corridor opened into a large room that took Ryan's breath away. It was clearly a command center, filled with holographic displays and control stations. But what caught his attention were the frozen images hanging in the air. They showed a battle, ships firing at each other, explosions frozen in mid-blast. It was like walking into a photograph. This is the war room, Arya said. The last battle we fought. I preserved everything exactly as it was in those final moments. I wanted humanity to see the truth when they finally returned. Ryan moved closer to one of the displays. His hands were shaking as he reached out to touch the control panel beneath it. Why me? Why wake up now? I'm just an archaeologist. I'm nobody important. You are human, Arya said simply. That is all that matters. My final orders were very clear. I was to remain hidden, silent, until a human being came seeking answers. The Galactic Council rewrote history after the war ended. They told humanity a lie, made your species believe you were reckless and dangerous, that you nearly destroyed the galaxy with your aggressive tactics. Tom stepped forward, his face pale. What do you mean, a lie? The war happened. Millions died. The devastation was real. The devastation was very real, Arya agreed. But the cause was not what you were told. The holographic displays suddenly came to life. The frozen battle began to move, ships dancing through space in complex patterns. Ryan watched in shock as the scene unfolded. He could see human ships, marked with Earth's old military insignia. But they weren't fighting against the Kethra vessels. They were fighting alongside them. Together, both human and Kethra fleets were battling something else entirely. Ryan leaned in closer, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The enemy ships were wrong somehow. They were dark, so dark they seemed to absorb the light around them. Their shapes hurt to look at, angles that didn't quite make sense, geometries that seemed to shift and change even as he watched. What are those things? Jennifer whispered. We called them the Devourers, Arya said, and for the first time, her voice carried something that sounded like emotion. Fear, maybe, or respect. They came from beyond known space, from regions we had never explored. They didn't communicate, didn't negotiate. They simply consumed everything in their path. Planets, ships, entire star systems. They would arrive, strip a world of all resources, and move on. Nothing we tried could stop them. The holographic battle continued. Ryan watched as conventional weapons from both human and Kethra ships hit the dark vessels with no effect. The blast simply vanished into that light-absorbing hull. The Galactic Council wanted to hide, Arya continued. They wanted to abandon the outer colonies, pull back to the core systems, and hope the Devourers would eventually stop their advance. But humanity said no. The Kethra agreed with us. Together, we decided to fight. Tom was recording everything on his handheld device, his eyes wide with shock. This isn't in any of the history books. Not even the classified ones I've seen. Because the Council erased it, Arya said. When we finally defeated the Devourers, when we drove them back beyond the rim, the older species of the Council faced an uncomfortable truth. Humanity, barely 2 centuries into space travel, had solved a problem they couldn't. We had built weapons and tactics that worked where 10,000 years of their experience had failed. We had united species they considered primitive. We had been effective in ways that frightened them. The holographic display changed, showing a different scene now. Ryan saw dozens of human ships, including the Prometheus, gathered in formation. They looked different from standard military vessels, more experimental, with unusual weapon arrays and strange configurations. The Prometheus was humanity's answer to extinction, Arya said. Not just a warship, but a research vessel, a diplomatic platform, and a weapons laboratory all in one. We were designed to fight enemies that shouldn't exist, to solve problems that seemed impossible. And we succeeded. That success made us dangerous in the eyes of the Council. Ryan's mind was reeling. Everything he'd learned about history, about humanity's role in the galaxy, was wrong. So they what? Just buried the truth. They rewrote it, Arya corrected. They made humanity and the Kethra the villains of their own story. They said we nearly destroyed the galaxy with our reckless warfare against each other. They quarantined the battle zones, classified all the real records, and created a false history that made humans look like dangerous children who needed to be controlled and limited. Jennifer had moved to another console and was pulling up data. Arya, what were your final orders? You said you were told to wait for humanity to return. The AI was quiet for a moment, then the entire ship rumbled as its massive engines came online. The sound was deep and powerful, vibrating through the deck plates beneath their feet. My orders were to preserve the truth, Arya said. To wait in silence until humanity came seeking answers. And then, when that day finally came, to do one thing above all else. What? Ryan asked. To take them home. To show them what they really are. And to prepare them for what's coming. What's coming? The holographic displays changed again, showing sensor data, recent scans from deep space. Ryan saw the same dark signatures, the same impossible geometries. The Devourers, Arya said quietly. They're coming back. And this time, humanity isn't ready. Ryan and his team spent the next 3 days exploring the Prometheus, and with each passing hour, they discovered something that challenged everything they thought they knew about human history. The ship was far more than just a warship. It was a floating city of innovation, a testament to what humanity could achieve when survival was on the line. Arya guided them through corridor after corridor, deck after deck. The ship had research laboratories filled with equipment that made modern science look primitive. There were manufacturing bays where experimental weapons had been built and tested. There were diplomatic meeting rooms designed to accommodate dozens of different alien species, each with their own environmental requirements. The Prometheus wasn't built just to fight. It was built to unite, to innovate, to adapt. This is human adaptive warfare doctrine, Arya explained as they entered one of the massive army sections. The room stretched out before them like a warehouse, filled with weapons of every conceivable design. Some looked conventional enough, like advanced rifles and energy cannons. Others were bizarre, almost alien in their configuration, clearly designed to counter threats that normal military thinking couldn't handle. Jennifer moved from weapon to weapon, her scanner working overtime. These designs, they're not in any database I've ever accessed. Some of this technology shouldn't even be possible with what we knew 300 years ago. That's because you weren't preparing for conventional warfare, Arya said. You were preparing for extinction. When you face an enemy that can absorb energy weapons, you develop kinetic alternatives. When you face an enemy that exists partially outside normal space, you develop weapons that can pull them into our dimension. Human military philosophy has always been about adaptation. You don't just prepare for the threats you know. You prepare for the impossible ones, the enemies you haven't even imagined yet. Tom was recording everything, his device capturing images and data that would rewrite history books across the galaxy. The Council must have been terrified of this. If humanity could innovate this quickly, this effectively, in just a few decades of warfare. They were already obsolete, Arya finished. Species that had dominated the galaxy for thousands of years suddenly faced the reality that these newcomers, these humans who'd barely left their own solar system a century earlier, were surpassing them in ways they couldn't match. That's why they buried the truth. It wasn't just about hiding the devourers. It was about hiding what humanity was capable of. The group continued deeper into the ship. They passed through crew quarters that could house thousands, dining halls designed for communal living, recreation areas that showed humans had tried to maintain some normalcy even during the darkest days of the war. Ryan found himself imagining what it must have been like, living aboard this vessel, knowing you were fighting for the survival of everything you'd ever known. But it was the medical bay that stopped them all in their tracks. Kreth had wandered ahead, his natural curiosity overcoming his fear. They heard him make a shocked clicking sound from his translator, and they all rushed to see what he'd found. The medical bay was enormous, filled with advanced equipment and treatment stations. But what caught their attention were the rows upon rows of stasis pods lining the walls. Ryan approached the nearest pod slowly. Inside, he could see a figure, perfectly preserved, floating in some kind of suspension fluid. The being wasn't human. It had 4 arms and gray skin, clearly from one of the Outer Rim species. But it was wearing an Earth Defense Fleet uniform, the old design from 3 centuries ago. Arya, what is this? Ryan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Volunteers, the AI responded, and for the first time, Ryan heard something like sadness in her voice. After the war ended, after we'd defeated the Devourers, the Galactic Council issued new laws. All mixed-species military units were to be disbanded immediately. Humans were to be separated from the allies they'd fought beside. The Council claimed it was for peacekeeping purposes, to prevent future conflicts. But the real reason was fear. They'd seen different species working together under human leadership, and they couldn't allow that to continue. Jennifer moved down the line of pods, counting. There must be hundreds of them here. Different species, all in Earth uniforms. 473, Arya said precisely. Soldiers from 12 different species who fought alongside humanity against the Devourers. When the Council ordered them to abandon their human comrades, they refused. They chose to enter stasis aboard the Prometheus rather than leave. They chose loyalty over their own governments. I have maintained their suspension for 312 years, keeping them safe, waiting for the day when they could wake to a galaxy that might finally understand what they sacrificed. Ryan felt the weight of history pressing down on him. These weren't just museum pieces or archaeological artifacts. These were people, real living beings who'd given up everything because they believed in something bigger than themselves. They'd believed in humanity's cause so deeply that they'd chosen to sleep for centuries rather than abandon it. Tom was studying the pod systems, his technical mind analyzing the equipment. The power requirements to maintain this many stasis fields for so long must be enormous. How did you manage it? Human engineering, Arya said again. We didn't just build weapons to fight the Devourers. We built systems that could outlast civilizations. The Prometheus was designed to be self-sufficient for centuries if necessary. Every system has backups, redundancies, alternative power sources. We were built to survive the impossible. Ryan walked through the rows of sleeping soldiers, reading the names and species designations on each pod. Warriors from worlds he'd only read about in history books, all of them frozen in time, still loyal to a cause the galaxy had tried to erase. Arya, he said slowly, why are you really showing us all this? Why wake up now? Why reveal all these secrets? There was a pause, longer than usual. When Arya spoke again, her avatar materialized in the center of the medical bay. She appeared as a woman in a captain's uniform, her expression serious and grave. Because they are back, she said simply. 17 days ago, my long-range sensors detected familiar energy signatures in the outer reaches of known space. The same spatial distortions, the same impossible geometries. The Devourers are returning. And this time, the galaxy isn't ready for them. The Council has spent 3 centuries suppressing the very weapons and tactics that could save them. They've kept humanity divided and weak, scattered across isolated colonies. They've forgotten how to fight an existential threat because they were too afraid of what humanity represented. Before Ryan could respond, alarm klaxons blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Arya's avatar flickered slightly as she directed her attention to external sensors. We have company, she announced. The group rushed to the nearest command station. The holographic displays showed 3 ships emerging from hyperspace just outside the atmosphere. They were Council enforcement vessels, military ships with weapons already charging. A transmission crackled over the speakers. The voice was cold, authoritative, speaking through a universal translator. Attention unidentified vessel. You are in violation of Galactic Treaty 773. This sector is under quarantine. Power down your systems immediately and prepare to be boarded. Failure to comply will result in the use of force. Ryan's heart was pounding. They were caught. The Council had found them, and there was no way his small team could fight off 3 military ships. But Arya didn't seem concerned. If anything, her avatar smiled slightly. Dr. Carter, this is your decision. We can power down, allow them to board, and watch as they bury the truth for another 3 centuries. Or we can show them exactly what they've been trying to hide. Ryan looked at Jennifer and Tom. Both of them nodded. Kreth clicked nervously but didn't object. Open a channel, Ryan said. And Arya? Show them everything. With pleasure, the AI responded. Activating full historical database transmission. They wanted to bury the truth. Let's see how they handle having it broadcast directly into their ship systems. The Prometheus came fully alive, its massive transmitters sending out a data stream that the Council ships couldn't block or ignore. 300 years of hidden history, raw and unfiltered, flooding their systems with the truth about the Devourers, about humanity's real role in saving the galaxy, about everything the Council had tried to erase. And in that moment, everything changed. The standoff lasted exactly 7 minutes. Ryan could see the 3 Council enforcement ships on the display screens, their weapons charged and ready to fire. But he didn't back down. He didn't threaten them or try to run. Instead, he did something far more powerful. He let the truth speak for itself. Arya transmitted everything directly into the Council ship's computer systems. Raw combat footage from the war, showing human and alien forces fighting side by side against the Devourers. Diplomatic logs proving that humanity had tried peaceful solutions first. Testimonies from dozens of different species, all praising human innovation and leadership. Scientific data showing how human researchers had cracked problems that had stumped galactic civilization for millennia. It was 300 years of hidden history, unedited and undeniable, flooding their systems faster than they could block it. Ryan watched the command screen as the lead Council ship's communication channel opened. An alien face appeared, covered in chitinous plates with mandibles that clicked as it spoke. The universal translator rendered its words into English. This is Admiral Veskry of the Galactic Defense Force. Dr. Carter, you need to stop this transmission immediately. These records are classified at the highest level. They were sealed for reasons of galactic stability and security. Ryan felt his anger rising. Classified? Or just convenient? You rewrote history, Admiral. You made humanity look like dangerous warmongers who nearly destroyed the galaxy. But these records show the truth. We weren't the problem. We were the solution. Veskry's mandibles quivered, a sign of agitation in his species. You don't understand what you're dealing with, Doctor. Yes, we altered the historical records. Yes, we suppressed certain information about humanity's role in the war. But we had good reasons. What reasons could possibly justify erasing the truth? Jennifer demanded from beside Ryan. The Admiral's composure cracked slightly. His next words came out rushed, almost defensive. Because you were too effective. Do you understand that? In less than 40 years, humanity went from barely achieving primitive spaceflight to building weapons that frighten civilizations 10,000 years older than you. You made technological leaps that should have taken centuries. You formed alliances with species we'd dismissed as too primitive to matter. You solved military problems that our greatest strategists had declared unsolvable. You were terrifying, not because you were violent, but because you were so incredibly capable. Ryan stared at the screen, trying to process what he was hearing. So you buried our achievements because we made you look bad. We buried them because the alternative was admitting that the old order was obsolete, Veskri said quietly. That newer species like humanity might surpass us. That perhaps we weren't the wise elder civilizations we claimed to be. It was easier to make you the villains of your own story, to limit your expansion, to keep you scattered and controlled. Before Ryan could respond, every alarm on the Prometheus started screaming at once. Arya's voice cut through the chaos, calm but urgent. Spatial distortion detected. Large scale. This signature matches Devourer technology. The main display changed, showing space near their location. Reality itself seemed to tear open, a wound in the fabric of the universe. From that impossible tear emerged something that made Ryan's blood run cold. It was a ship, but calling it that didn't do it justice. The thing was composed of angles that hurt to look at, geometries that shouldn't exist in normal space. It was dark, so dark it seemed to absorb all light around it, creating a void-like silhouette against the stars. Devourer scout vessel, Arya announced. They found us. Perfect timing, really. On the screen, Admiral Veskri's face had gone pale, his mandibles frozen in shock. That's impossible. The Devourers were driven beyond the rim 300 years ago. They shouldn't be here. They can't be here. The Devourer ship didn't waste time with warnings or communication. It simply fired. A beam of something that wasn't quite energy and wasn't quite matter lanced out from its hull. One of the Council enforcement ships was directly in its path. Ryan watched in horror as the vessel didn't explode or burn. It simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, the next moment there was nothing, not even debris. The ship and its entire crew had been erased from reality. The two remaining Council ships opened fire immediately, unleashing everything they had. Energy beams, kinetic missiles, plasma charges, all of it struck the Devourer vessel. And all of it did absolutely nothing. The attacks simply vanished into that light-absorbing hull, having no more effect than throwing stones at a mountain. Shields up, Ryan ordered, surprised at how calm his own voice sounded. Arya, activate whatever combat systems this ship has. Finally, the AI responded, and Ryan could swear he heard satisfaction in her voice. I've been waiting 3 centuries to do this again. The Prometheus surged forward with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for something so massive. Arya piloted the ancient warship with precision that no organic crew could match, weaving through space as the Devourer fired again. The beam passed close enough that Ryan could see the edges of reality warping around it, but Arya dodged it smoothly. Human combat doctrine, Arya explained as she maneuvered. Never fight the way your enemy expects. The Devourers exist partially outside normal spacetime, which is why conventional weapons can't touch them. But humans developed a countermeasure. Ryan's hands moved across the control console, and he was shocked to realize he somehow understood what he was doing. The interface was intuitive, designed for human reflexes and human thinking patterns. Weapons systems came online, targeting solutions appeared on the displays. Targeting solution acquired, Arya announced. I recommend the Singularity Lance. It was specifically designed for targets like this. Ryan's finger hovered over the firing control. He hesitated for just a second, understanding that he was about to use a weapon that had been banned for 300 years. Then he thought about that Council ship that had just been erased, about the crews who died without even time to scream. Fire, he said. The weapon made reality itself scream. Ryan couldn't hear it, not in the vacuum of space, but he felt it through the ship's hull, a deep vibration that seemed to pull at his very atoms. The Singularity Lance fired, and space twisted around the Devourer scout vessel. The darkness that surrounded it suddenly collapsed inward, dragging the ship fully into normal dimensional space. And just like that, it was vulnerable. All ships, concentrate fire on the marked coordinates. Ryan transmitted to the Council vessels. To their credit, Admiral Veskry and his crews didn't hesitate. Both Council ships opened fire again, and this time their weapons found their mark. Combined with the Prometheus's own arsenal, the firepower tore into the Devourer vessel. Explosions rippled across its hull. The impossible angles fractured and broke. The ship that had seemed invincible moments before came apart in a brilliant flash of light. Silence fell across the battlefield. The debris of the Devourer scout drifted slowly, already beginning to break apart and dissolve as whatever held it together failed. Admiral Veskry's face reappeared on the screen. His mandibles were trembling, and his eyes were wide with shock. How did you do that? That weapon, that technique, we've never seen anything like it. Because your Council banned it, Ryan said quietly. 300 years ago, humanity developed weapons specifically designed to fight the Devourers. Weapons that worked. And you made us destroy them all, or so you thought. How many colonies have you lost recently, Admiral? How many ships have gone missing in the outer sectors? How many times have you encountered the Devourers again and failed to stop them because you threw away the only weapons that actually worked? The silence from the Council ships was answer enough. We need to speak with the High Council, Veskry finally said, his voice shaken. All of us. Because if what you're saying is true, if the Devourers are returning and we've lost the ability to fight them, then we need humanity's help. And we need it now. The journey to the Galactic Council's capital world took 2 days at maximum speed. Ryan spent most of that time preparing himself for what was coming. The hearing was supposed to be a formality, he knew that much. The Council would call him in, lecture him about violating treaties and disturbing quarantine zones, impound the Prometheus, and bury the whole incident under layers of bureaucracy and classified stamps. That was how these things usually went. But Ryan had other plans. And so did Arya. The Prometheus emerged from hyperspace directly above the Council's ringworld capital, a massive artificial structure that orbited a carefully managed star. The ship held position there, in clear view of every sensor and telescope on the planet below. Ryan wanted everyone to see it. This ancient warship, supposedly destroyed 3 centuries ago, hanging in space like a ghost from a past the Council had tried to erase. Before the Council could react, before they could scramble their defense forces or jam communications, Arya began broadcasting. She transmitted her entire historical archive on every public channel, every news frequency, every communication band that civilians and governments across the galaxy used. Raw footage of the war against the Devourers. Diplomatic records showing humanity's alliances. Scientific data proving human innovations. Testimonies from dozens of species praising human courage and creativity. The truth, unfiltered and unstoppable, flooding across the galaxy faster than any government could contain it. But Ryan's most powerful statement came when Arya woke the soldiers. All 473 of them, carefully and slowly, bringing them out of their 300-year sleep. Warriors from a dozen different species, all wearing Earth Defense Fleet uniforms, all blinking in confusion as they woke to find themselves in a galaxy that had completely changed. Ryan stood before them in the Prometheus's main hangar and explained everything. The lies the Council had told. The history that had been erased. The 3 centuries they'd slept through. Many of them wept. Some grew angry. But all of them, when Ryan asked if they'd stand with him before the Council, agreed without hesitation. The Council chamber was enormous, a circular room with seats rising in tiers for representatives from hundreds of worlds. Ryan walked into that chamber with his head held high. Behind him came Jennifer and Tom, still recording everything. Behind them came Kreth, clicking nervously but refusing to abandon his human friend. And behind them all came the soldiers, a living reminder of everything the Council had tried to bury. The chamber erupted into chaos the moment they entered. Some Council members immediately called for Ryan's arrest. Others demanded explanations. A few representatives from younger species were already pulling up the broadcasts Arya had sent, reading the truth for the first time and reacting with shock and anger. Order. The voice cut through the chaos like a blade. It came from Councillor Thren, the oldest member of the Council and representative of a species that had been spacefaring for 10,000 years. He was ancient even by his people's standards, his body supported by medical technology, but his mind was still sharp. The human will speak. We will hear what he has to say. Ryan stepped forward to the central podium, very aware that billions of beings across the galaxy were watching this broadcast. He'd prepared a speech, carefully worded arguments about justice and truth. But standing there, looking at the faces of the Council members who'd spent 3 centuries lying to the galaxy, he decided to speak from the heart instead. "I'm not here for revenge," he began, his voice steady. "I'm not here to punish anyone for the lies you told. I'm here because Arya woke up for a reason. 17 days ago, she detected Devourer signatures in deep space. They're coming back. The enemy you claimed was defeated, the threat you erased from history books, is returning. And your fleets can't stop them because you've spent 3 centuries suppressing the very weapons and tactics that actually worked." The human speaks truth. It was Counselor Thren again, his voice heavy with old regret. "My species fought alongside humanity during the war. I was there. I remember what these humans achieved, how they united us, how they found solutions when we had given up hope. And I remember the fear that came after. The Council's decision to separate humanity from its allies, to rewrite history, to diminish human achievements. I voted against it then. I was outvoted." Another council member, a younger representative from a species Ryan didn't recognize, stood up angrily. "You're talking about destabilizing 3 centuries of carefully maintained peace. Human military innovation combined with their alliance building nearly created a power block that would have dominated the galaxy. We wanted to save lives, not dominate anyone." Ryan shot back. "These soldiers behind me, they gave up everything. They chose to sleep for 300 years rather than abandon their human friends. The galaxy thanked them by erasing their service, by pretending they never existed. But they are still willing to fight. Not because you deserve it, but because it's the right thing to do. Because when extinction comes knocking, you don't ask about politics or power structures. You fight, or you die." "And what exactly do you want from us?" asked another counselor, her tone wary and suspicious. Ryan took a deep breath. "Recognition, truth, and freedom. Restore humanity to full status in the galactic community. Stop treating us like dangerous children who need to be managed. Release all the classified research from the war. Let us access the technologies we developed. Let us rebuild the alliances you forced us to abandon. Let us be what we actually are, partners in survival, not problems to be contained." The council chamber fell silent. Ryan could see council members exchanging glances, having quiet conversations through private channels. Some looked angry. Others looked thoughtful. A few looked scared. "The council will deliberate," Counselor Thren announced. "We will reconvene in 3 days with our decision." Those 3 days felt like the longest of Ryan's life. He stayed aboard the Prometheus, watching news feeds from across the galaxy. Public reaction to Arya's broadcast was mixed. Some species were outraged at the deception. Others defended the council's decisions. Many humans were simply shocked to learn that their history was so much bigger and more heroic than they'd been taught. But 2 things happened during those 3 days that changed everything. First, another Devourer incursion occurred in the Outer Rim. A Council defense fleet responded using standard modern tactics. The battle was broadcast live. Ryan watched in sick horror as the Devourer ships tore through the Council vessels like they were made of paper. Hundreds died. The Devourers retreated only when reinforcements arrived, and even then, they left at their own pace, clearly unworried about pursuit. The second incident happened the next day. Another Devourer attack, different sector. Another Council fleet, another devastating loss. The galaxy watched as their protectors proved helpless against an enemy that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. When the Council reconvened, the mood had shifted dramatically. The vote wasn't unanimous, and Ryan could see several Council members glaring at him with pure hatred, but it was enough. Humanity would be restored to full status. The historical records would be corrected and made public. The classified research would be released. Human colonies would be allowed to rebuild and expand. It wasn't perfect justice, Ryan knew that. But it was a start. He stood on the Prometheus's bridge, watching as the news spread across human space. Colonies that had been isolated and restricted for generations suddenly learned they were free. Humans who'd been taught they were dangerous and reckless discovered they were actually heroes who'd saved the galaxy. "Where to now, Captain?" Arya asked, and Ryan noticed she'd given him a promotion. He smiled. "You know where, Arya. There are more ships like you out there, aren't there? Hidden across the galaxy, waiting for humans to wake them up." 17 vessels, Arya confirmed. "I'm already detecting their hibernation signals now that I know what to look for. They've been sleeping in jungles, ocean trenches, asteroid fields, abandoned moons. All of them waiting for humanity to come home." "Then let's wake them up," Ryan said. "Begin wide-spectrum awakening signal. Let's bring the fleet home." Arya's transmission pulsed out across the galaxy, a specific frequency that only human ships would recognize. And one by one, they began to respond. Ancient vessels buried under centuries of growth or hidden in forgotten corners of space started powering up. Their lights flickered to life. Their engines hummed with renewed purpose. The Prometheus had risen. Now the rest would follow. Humanity, scattered and diminished for 300 years, was finally coming home. And the galaxy would remember why they'd been both feared and respected. Not for violence or aggression, but for something far more powerful, an absolute refusal to surrender, even when facing the impossible. When extinction came calling, humans didn't hide. They didn't run. They stood their ground and fought, because that's what humans did. And now, with the Devourers returning, the galaxy would need that human spirit more than ever.